I don't know. Whatever. We're live. We're doing it live. We are looking at top 4 of the Collector's Cash Midseason Showdown in Kansas City. Oh man, this is going to be exciting. This is Leonard against Whitney, and Leonard and Whitney are actually pretty good friends. Whitney coming all the way in from California to participate in this mid-season showdown to hang out with some friends, and he's made it into top cut.
Yeah, both very well-established players, both very strong, and they both know each other's playstyles because they've played a lot of things. They've played a lot against each other.
And so we've seen both players on stream, and so we've seen that Whitney's got an interesting Tapu Fini, an interesting Kartana, but we haven't seen this Pheromosa out of him yet, and it's kind of interesting to think that this Pheromosa, I mean, how well is this going to pair up against Leonard's team?
Actually, if it's I don't know the exact, of course I don't know the exact variant, but if it has the high jump kick, it can threaten the knockouts onto the Persian and Nihilego, and if it has poison jab, it can threaten the Bulu a lot as well. We might see that mode from Whitney here.
Yeah, I mean, we won't see a whole lot of effectiveness if that high jump kick is present against like Gyarados, but especially against something like Celesteela, that's going to do some pretty good damage. Whitney's definitely going to have to play around that though, with obviously Protect, dealing 50% damage to the high jump kick user, and then if there's a Marowak switch in, again continuing on and then crashing. Like that high jump kick is a high risk, high reward type of thing for Whitney with Pheromosa if he's got it. Let's see if we can get them to mute, because that's in our ears.
I guess going into the match, we do see Whitney lead the Pheromosa Arcanine, while Leonard leads 9 Marowak and Persian here. Very good lead by Leonard, as even though the Marowak gets intimidated, it's not really threatened by the Pheromosa and Arcanine at all. And the Persian gets a decent amount of fake out pressure. It has to be weary of the Lele switch in the back, of course, but it is going to be it's pretty threatening here.
Yeah, so what's interesting about this is that there's a little bit of mind games going on. So Whitney has gone ahead and intimidated the Marowak on Leonard's side, and that puts Whitney in a decent position where he might be able to take a Shadow Bone from Marowak with his Tapu Lele. And bringing Tapu Lele in would mean that he's going to prevent any sort of fake out. But now the problem is that Pheromosa isn't necessarily going to want to take a Flare Blitz from Marowak no matter what.
Alright, so we do see the Persian actually just switch out here, and we do see the Tapu Lele come in and maybe try to just block that fake out, I'm going to assume. And
a nice U-turn to get Pheromosa out of here while doing a little bit of damage.
Very smart switch by Whitney, as potentially trying to block that Flare Blitz coming from the Marowak.
And so the nice thing about this is that because he switched first and then used the U-turn, he can cycle that Intimidate back in with Arcanine, and then he's got a -2 Marowak on Leonard's side. The problem being, obviously, that Nihilego is going to have a super effective power gem up against this Arcanine.
But he does bring in the Arcanine anyway, just getting that second Intimidate onto the Marowak.
And so that Shadow Bone going into the Arcanine slot, which previously was that Pheromosa. So you can see that Leonard may have expected that there was going to be a switch into Tapu Lele, but it looks like he didn't quite know which slot it was going into.
Very interesting switch by Whitney here, switching in that Arcanine, now kind of letting Nihilego have 2 things on the field that it can potentially just threaten the knockout on.
Yeah, and I don't think that we've seen the item that's on Leonard's the Nihilego on Leonard's side. I don't think that he's revealed that on stream yet. So that's another thing that we need to keep in mind, is that there are some focus sash variants of Nihilego, and then Life Orb is a very common item that's on Nihilego, as well as either of the choice items, Scarf or Specs. But we're going to go ahead and see that Whitney knows that Arcanine is fairly important here, and protecting the Arcanine, maybe predicting that there's going to be some sort of power gem into the Arcanine slot, but it looks like a nice and powerful Sludge Bomb into the Tapu Lele, going ahead and picking up that KO.
Yeah, that's a very important KO, as we did see that Tapu Lele move before the Nihilego. So that could signify that it is the Choice Scarf variant that Whitney is running.
Absolutely. Nihilego is no slouch when it comes to base speed. And Tapu Lele not quite as fast. Tapu Lele somewhere around, 90 base speed or so? And if I remember correctly, Nihilego is above 100.
But good turn by Whitney here, as he does bring back in the Pheromosa. The Pheromosa can threaten the high jump kick, and the Arcanine, we already saw that it was Inferno Overdrive. It can threaten the KO on the Celesteela as well.
And so another smart move on Whitney's side is that he sees that Marowak was one of the big problems for Pheromosa to be able to do as much damage as it wants. No amount of high jump kicking is going to deal any damage to that Marowak. And so now we see that this Pheromosa picking up a really easy knockout on that Nihilego, and then grabbing that Beast Boost.
And that's huge. That's going to be so much damage. And this Inferno Overdrive going into the Celesteela, it's not protecting. So this is going to be a ton of damage being exerted here.
Yeah, this Arcanine with the Inferno Overdrive, we have seen some Electrium Z Arcanines, but we saw in the previous time that Whitney was on stream that he has opted for the same type attack bonus of the Firium Z on the Fire-type Arcanine. And that is another clean knockout from Whitney. He's got a beautiful double down here.
Absolutely, and now with the Persian in the back, that Pheromosa can basically do whatever it wants with either U-turn or high jump kick that it has revealed. And Whitney, pretty clean game 1 victory.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, with the Psychic Terrain up, with no Bulu because there's no other Pokemon in the back, Whitney's got both Arcanine and the Pheromosa just doing a ton of damage. So, I mean, what does Leonard even do here? What does he do to adjust for the next game?
I think if you're Leonard, you need some type of speed control. I was actually kind of surprised he did not bring the Gyarados in game 1, because the Gyarados with the Hydro Vortex can threaten the KO on, honestly, 3 of the mons that Whitney has on the field, or Whitney has. So I think if you want the Gyarados here for the matchup, not a lot of things can hit it for a ton of damage.
So one question, if I remember correctly, we didn't see the 4th Pokemon out of Whitney, and we've been talking all day about preserving as much information as possible, and it looks like Whitney's doing a great job of that.
Oh yeah, it was a beautifully constructed match. He switched into Pheromosa exactly when he needed to. He didn't really, once he got rid of that Marowak, it was he pinned everything, because the Nihilego couldn't switch. Even if he projected the high jump kick, Pheromosa would still be on the field, and it would have been almost over at that point anyway.
Yeah, and that Firium Z on Arcanine, definitely doing a great job, because we've seen how bulky Celesteela can be today, and several Flare Blitzes going into several Celesteelas today, and I mean, almost none of them have been KO'd from just a pure Flare Blitz.
Yeah, Inferno Overdrive seemed like a very good call for this competition, as it's clearly paid off in the matches, as he is our undefeated today.
Yeah, and going into game 2, I mean, Whitney has a decent amount of momentum behind him, and I mean, really, as long as he can continue to keep this Pheromosa doing damage and keep it around, I think he's in a good position. And on Leonard's side, for sure, he needs to preserve that Marowak. Maybe not realizing that Whitney was going to prioritize that Marowak quite so much, but also Whitney showing off game 1 that may well be a Scarf Tapu Lele, which maybe Leonard wasn't expecting.
And the Lele could just exert so much offensive pressure onto the Nihilego, which is honestly Leonard's one of the more important Pokemon for Leonard in this matchup, as it can pick up the knockout on 5 of the 6 Mons, except for the Kartana.
Yeah. And so we'll see. It looks like Leonard has definitely selected his Pokemon fairly quickly, and Whitney's taking just a little bit more time. And like we said, these two are friends, and so we can't hear exactly what's going on in their conversations, but they could be chatting it up, enjoying this, because it's been quite a while since Whitney and Leonard have been able to play in person at the same event. Whitney's been in California for a couple years now. This has got to be a fantastic time to have a reunion. Unfortunate to have to take out one of your best friends in the semifinals of a tournament, but that's just unfortunately how Pokemon goes sometimes, where you make friends and then you end up having to face them in tournaments.
All right. We do see the Gyarados come in. Gyarados Nihilego versus we looks like we have Pheromosa Arcanine here.
Yeah, so this Nihilego, as we'd seen in preview, does a lot of damage, and we saw that it was able to. We've seen Nihilego able to take plenty of KOs. The Sludge Bomb to take out anything with a fairy, the Power Gem to be able to take out fire types, and even do some strong neutral damage to a fairly frail Pokemon such as Pheromosa. And this turn 1, Leonard has the Gyarados out, intimidating both Arcanine and the Pheromosa. So reducing that damage output there, but also having a lot of power with that Gyarados and a threat of Dragon Dance.
It actually looks like Leonard has a pretty safe turn. Gyarados should be able to live, and especially with the Arcanine protecting, should be able to live any combination of attacks that come out. So that Nihilego, definitely a very strong offensive presence right now.
And so we're going to see that U-turn. Again, we've seen this out of Whitney last game, where where Pheromosa, Pheromosa is able to U-turn out of sticky situations. Being the fastest Pokemon on the field really has its advantages there. And so at this point with Tapu Lele, I mean, I don't know about this one, but I feel like he's got to have something up his sleeve.
And we see the Dragon Dance bringing the attack back to neutral and bumping up the speed +1, so it probably outspeeds that Pheromosa now. Very good play by Leonard.
And since we can presume that the Choice Scarf is on this Tapu Lele, Whitney is definitely putting on a decent amount of pressure, because Gyarados, once it gets the Dragon Dance, is pretty quick, but that Dragon Dance is only +1 speed. And so we've got the Nihilego going ahead and getting out of here. Doesn't want to take a whole lot of damage. And then the Helping Hand out of Arcanine. Oh, this is going to be a ton of damage. Potentially Psychic Terrain, boosted Psychics into whatever target it wants. And then it goes straight into the Gyarados. The Helping Hand, the Psychic Terrain, the Stab bonus, and the Choice Scarf all coming together to take out that Gyarados in one hit.
Whitney making such a remarkable play there, allowing for him to just pick up the knockout on whichever Pokemon he wanted here. Beautiful play, reading into that Marowak switch in, not going for the Thunderbolt, and the Helping Hand Psychic was more than enough to pick up the KO on the Gyarados, and that makes this matchup a lot easier for Whitney.
Yeah, and so this Scarf Tapu Lele, we saw last game that it was able to do massive amounts of damage to this Marowak, and we also saw that the Fiery MZ was able to do a huge amount of damage and take the one-hit KO on Celesteela. And so now, at this point, Leonard definitely needs to play kind of out of his mind to make sure that he's got this in the bag.
I think one of the important things he needs to do is making sure that he keeps one of these two Pokemon alive, as that's he actually switches out the Celesteela, but the Tapu Lele and Pheromosa both deal with the Nihilego, so if he can keep one of the two alive, I think that's just a very good turn for.
And there we've got the Psychic, the huge powered Psychic in the Psychic terrain against the Marowak Protect doing literally nothing. But we've got Nihilego out now. And Nihilego, last game we saw didn't really do that well against Pheromosa, but we still have the chance to protect. Marowak not really scared of this Pheromosa. But then Whitney has to make a really strong decision here. Which side does he prioritize?
Yeah, because there's just a bunch of options. With the Marowak protecting the last turn, it offers a lot less flexibility for what Leonard can do with the Marowak.
Mm-hmm.
So he can either play this game safe, or if he tries to make a read, but he could potentially lose his Marowak, which is his key. And that's why we see the Marowak switch out here into the Celesteela.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is a good decision by Leonard to preserve that Marowak, knowing that it's a huge damage output, absorbing that Psychic relatively easily, and then Nihilego taking a high jump kick not very well. That's a 90 base accuracy move. The threat of Protect, that could have been a very dangerous situation, but that Life Orb recoil explaining exactly why that Pheromosa is doing just so much damage.
And now with the Pheromosa with the Beast Boost, I believe it threatens the KO onto that Celesteela from here.
Mm-hmm. At this point, I think... Oh no, we got the Psychic on the KO the first time. I'm thinking back to the last game where we had a couple Beast Boosts going around. But right now, Celesteela, as you said, in a very precarious situation. Marowak is threatened by the Tapu Lele in Psychic terrain, which hasn't faded yet. And Celesteela not in a great position. So we've got that Psychic coming out from the Tapu Lele. And it looks like it just barely survived with 12 HP. That's an incredibly bulky Marowak.
As it does hang on, that could just reveal that it was maybe a more specially defensive Marowak. That Pheromosa, though, cleaning up the easy KO onto the Celesteela with the high jump kick, and now it's 3-1 in Whitney's favor. It looks like this game is over.
It looks like Leonard was definitely expecting the Celesteela to be able to survive the high jump kick, even at +1. Otherwise, I imagine that Leonard would have gone for a Protect, and then maybe prioritize the Pheromosa, which now, I mean, even a U-turn would be able to take out this Marowak. But absolutely, it looks like Whitney is going up to the finals. And I mean, just amazing play from Whitney, who hasn't had a whole lot of tournament performances this year. He's been a little bit locked over in Monterey, California. Not been able to travel to too many events, but it doesn't look like he's lost a step.
Not at all, as he's continuing on as the undefeated in this tournament. Getting the 3-0 over Leonard Kraft. And going to the finals to play Joshua Adams.
Alright, so while they're going to get the next match set up, we're going to take a short break real quick. That was Leonard Kraft against Whitney Johnson, with Whitney taking the 2-0 in the set.